Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another session with Michael and I. Today, on the 14th of May, 2022, Michael is joined with me here on Skype, and we have a new session on the biblical view of conspiracy with the 32nd session, it looks like, Michael. We're in ritual number 6, Kennedy Ritual. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, welcome, Brett, and hello, dear listeners out there. Once again, it's me just trying to expose the Kennedy ritual or the Kennedy assassination on November the 22nd, 1963. So this is the runner-up to 31, and so I don't know how many sessions will come. I would expect that will be double the time. Oh, the double amount. I think it will at least 60 because there's so much stuff coming up. It's unbelievable. But if you read between the lines and if you look behind the curtain, then things are showing up, which really would make sense. So I'm just beginning right away. This is a biblical view on the Kennedy Ritual Part 6, and I assume you will see things coming up in Kennedy Ritual 7, so in the next episode, where you will absolutely shake your head and say that cannot be true. Because if you really combine things with biblical things, then you really see the things in a different view. So, but this is just session 32. Kennedy Ritual, let's get it on. I got a strange title for that is called Solomonic Coincidences. And as Brett is aware, and everybody is aware of the fact that there are really no coincidences in the world. Speaking of that, it has all been planned before, and there are no coincidences because everything that happens shall happen that way, right?
That's right.
Cool. So Solomonic coincidences. We will come to that in the last part of the session. Let's get it on and let's start somewhere. Because we have been fooled much of our time, much of our life. When we did 2 years ago about satanic media gender exposed Phil Collins, his dialogue with Satan actually in the air tonight, from the Miami Vice pilot episode called Brother's Keeper, we of course had made the reference to the King James Bible, Genesis 4:9, and the Lord God said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he, speaking of Cain, said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? Then, of course, it is the biblical reference to brother's keeper, but also in the northern jurisdiction of the Freemasonry, brother's keeper is the official title of the 31st degree. So that means that different symbols, or one symbol and the same, or one name and the same, have actually different opinions or different meanings actually within a certain community, within a certain order, within a certain brotherhood. It's unbelievable. You could view that from different perspectives, but I'm really afraid that you see that you will never know what they really mean, except that, of course, Miami Vice also is a distraction program to entertain the people. It has nothing to do with truth, and also there should also fascinate people in front of the television. But I just want to say that also when we are doing research, we are learning every day. Yeah, even but we are now not the youngest guys anymore, but we are learning every day. So people have been fooled by the television. People have been fooled by the cinema. People are fooled by Hollywood. This is the TV Times Top 20 Most Watched Streaming Series of 2019. Yeah. Now look at the line here of the most famous television series. It's almost all is extremely negative. Lucifer, of course, the old title of Satan. Stranger Things, 13 reasons why. Then orange is the new black, and orange, of course, is also the one of the colors of the sun, and orange, of course, is also the color of Freemason, of a very high Freemason degree. And then you got sex education, you got chilling adventures of Sabrina, which is a witch. Yeah? Sabrina is a witch. Then you got the Black Mirror, you got Dark, and you got a Punisher, and blah. Yeah, what do you expect of the mindset of the youth today when they are watching these programs? Love, Death and Robots, Mindhunter. And people are not looking to the truth. People are just, the majority of people is just being brainwashed and entertained. Yeah. So when you come up and say that Lucifer has been mentioned in the Bible, they say, oh, never existed, it's just a TV character. Yeah. And Black Mirror and Dark and Punisher, I don't think there are some positive things here mentioning in that thing. But you see that if you want to serve a satanic audience, you have to feed them with the satanic content.
That's true, Michael. 13 reasons why. Kabbalistic number, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The problem is when you look upon the Kennedy thing, you have to start with a white paper or blank sheet. Because usually you've been bombarded and you've been indoctrinated with all the things. And that's the key thing in it, that you have to be aware of the fact that absolutely everything has been faked and can be faked and will be faked. It is most likely that everything is faked, and it's very hard and it's very time consuming to go all into the details. What is faked? And usually in that modern day and age, everything can be faked. For example, if you see these deep fakes on YouTube, when people actually are trying with their home equipment to create things which never really happened, then you can imagine what kind of what tools the government and the agencies got. So that's really awkward to go into this, and really would use your logic and your reasonable thinking, then you really have to admit that the government is capable of almost doing every illusion out there. They got your data, they got your pictures of your passport, they got your pictures of your credit cards, maybe they got your handwriting, and they got everything that they can make something up. They can, that they can crucify you digitally. Yeah, when your face has been shown on every television screen in the United States, for example, and it's been said that this character and this man is wanted, and this has made an assassination on the president, for example, then I think the majority of people will simply believe it. So the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. This is a very actual recent example. This is the Ukraine conflict. Yeah. So this is the Ukraine conflict. This is picture number 1, make love, not war. And the rest I cannot grasp because I'm not familiar with Cyrillic, with the Russian language and writing. But you see here in the background the famous flag of the Ukraine, which resembles blue, kind of blue and yellow. And this is the picture which you come across when you look to some websites. But now I will minimize the picture. Then you see a comparison here. And now please tell me what is original and what is fake. Yeah. So is the upper picture the original, make love not war, or is the lower picture the original, make war not love? And on the upper picture you see all these flags of the Ukraine, and on the lower picture you see the flags of Russia. And I think it only takes a very skilled 16-year-old to create that kind of images. Yeah, so just tell me, yeah, these people who have just faked one of them, yeah, because one of them must be true and one of them must be fake. We do not know which is which, or what I would like to say is which is which. Yeah, so that means actually that you cannot differ anymore, because both of the pictures seem legit. Both of the people seem being holding out the actual things. I would go for the first picture, the upper picture, but you see that I cannot be sure, because I think it only takes the skills of a 16-year-old with a very, very, very fashioned and skilled machine, yeah, with a new quadro processor and with a very fancy software, and then he says, okay, then create all these colors into that color, yeah. So you see that how subtle the serpent actually works into making people into a certain belief, yeah. So everybody who sees here the picture, one of the pictures, is totally convinced if that shows up in a very, very serious news agency or a very serious newspaper, they are really coming up with the thing and say, oh yeah, I've seen that on the television, I've seen it on CNN, I've seen it on the BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, and therefore it must be true because this is a serious television series, station and series. Yeah. So, Brett, what would you think? Could you see a difference between the upper and the lower picture here?
I would say that the lower picture has larger flags, which means they could be overlaid much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So that you could use. Yeah. So I think your initial comment is correct, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I would tend to think the top one is the real one and the bottom one is the fake one.
Yeah, and you see then how easy it is to betray the people. Brett, I'm now hearing a little bit of feedback. Now it's gone. Yeah, now it's gone. So it is very easy to betray the people into believing that people are aggressive and people are against love and they want to do the things. And and this is just the humble and the serpent, just divide et impera, the old rule from the Roman Empire, divide and conquer. Yeah, so you have to keep the people busy instead that they keep themselves busy with the Bible or the truth. They have to be kept busy. But back now to the Kennedy assassination. So this is just a kind of repetition from the last episode. So in the last episode, we spoke about the Freemason allegory of Hiram Abiff, that he was being murdered by 3 assassins who attacked him to look for the secret of this architect, and the secret was never being revealed, and his body was being hid outside of the town unless King Solomon found it and buried him. And you see, these are 3 people who murdered this Hiram Abiff, and we know that the Kennedy ritual is exactly the Freemason ritual of the Hiram Abiff. And in comparison to that, the United States House Select Committee, as well as the Warren Commission, concluded, not proved, but proven, but concluded that Oswald 3 rifle shots fired who caused the injuries of Kennedy and Connolly. This is just repetition. You see that 3 shots are necessary and people are being indoctrinated. And you see in that upper picture here, they're not being indoctrinated by the shots in themselves, but they're also being indoctrinated by the wardrobe. You know what I mean. I don't have to express it verbally here. And also, they are being indoctrinated in that museum, which is the Temple of the Muses here, with that rifle allegedly being the rifle who shot then the president from that 6th floor window. But also, the Warren Commission also had concluded, or they had this consensus, so that means that the members of that commission just concluded that it must be so. Yeah, but people are fallible. Yes, and also the Pope is, in my humble opinion, fallible. So this is just a repetition. You see, there has to be 3 shots because it has to go according to the ritual. And another condition for the ritual is just that Hiram Abiff has to be murdered inside the temple. So it can only happen inside the Dealey Plaza because that is the temple area in Dallas. By 3 ruffians. So that is also the reason why you see these so-called 3 tramps in very decent and dirty clothes. Yeah, this is just the 3 ruffians. Yeah, they have to play that character. These people are actors. And now we're coming to the new part. The new part is from a video and also from the website Spartacus Educational. JFK Holt is about Chauncey Holt, who was being accused of being the member of the One Assassins or the One Tramps on that regard. And this is also a character who was in touch with the CIA and some other mobsters like Meyer Lansky. Now you got here a decent black and white picture of Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, handing out pamphlets in New Orleans because he only traveled to Dallas and he only got a job in the Texas School Book Depository about 6 weeks before the assassination took place. What a coincidence, huh? This episode is not by coincidence called Solomonic coincidences. It's not a coincidence, and I came up with that title. But now you have to look to that ritual because it is very strange that people really are so naive that they think that, oh yeah, there was a lone nut and all the other things surrounding that assassination are just coming in by randomly, and they're just happening by accident. There is no accident. This is a photograph of the trams arrested at Dealey Plaza on that very day, November the 22nd, 1963. In October 1991, a certain Mr. Holt, who was being accused of being one of the members, confessed to John Craig, Philip Rogers, and Gary Shaw about his role in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Holt's story was undermined in 1992 when the Dallas Police Department revealed that the three trams were Gus Abrams, John F. Gedney, and Harold Doyle. Isn't that very strange, Brett? When there is something of national concern, speaking of the assassination of an American president, that they needed that long period of time to come up with the names of the people who were being then captured, and they're being then taken into custody, and they're being then being interrogated. Isn't that very strange? Why does it take so long?
Well, eventually the truth will be told, Michael. How many years was that? Let's see. What is that? Like, 30 years?
Yeah, almost.
Not quite.
Not exactly. Yeah. So you see.
Isn't it true though, Michael, that I know I read here once that when something becomes, say, 25 years old, it becomes an antique. So, yeah, this is antiquity here. So I suppose they can finally let the truth out at some point, As for the rest of the story, it's...
but you got a very, very, very easy role at this moment, because in the German script I had Sister Stephanie trying to come up with the answer, because I answered her, Stephanie, how many years are in between 1992 and 1963?
29.
29.
Yeah.
So 2 plus 9?
Oh! There's that famous number again, 11.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, right.
What did you expect? Because this episode is called Solomonic Coincidence. This is just a coincidence. Of course, that after they were pressed because of a so-called wrong confession of Mr. Holt, then they came up with the conclusio that they really knew the names of the three trams, but they did not reveal it for 29 years. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Do you call that information? Or do you call that withheld information? And I think that is not randomly or coincidentally. That is just on purpose. Yeah, you see that many documents are not officially published right up to this very day, and we are almost 60 years later.
Yeah.
60 years.
Yeah, that's
my. So people will toss you around, and you see that they mix up opinion with truth. Yeah, and it's very hard to find out the truth. But the truth must be that these three guys, whoever they may be, are part of the ritual. You cannot conclude that these were the guys who actually shot, because according to the ritual, they shot. But according to the Roman Commission, it was Lee Harvey Oswald who shot 3 times. Yeah, according to the Roman Commission, it was no 3 trams who shot once. But it was Lee Harvey Oswald, one guy, who shot thrice or 3 times. Is it thrice?
Yeah, it can be.
Can be, yeah. So what do you? So you see that
that's in the Bible when the cock crows thrice.
Yes,
thrice. Yeah. You will deny me twice, or wait, you will deny. Maybe it's the other way around. I forget. Yeah, but I know it's used in there.
But you know what I mean. You see that you don't need Lee Harvey Oswald if you would had 3 assassins. But the problem is they cannot admit of 3 assassins, because then it would be a conspiracy. So it had to be a lone nut. So this is also the first violation of that ritual. Yeah? Lee Harvey Oswald himself is a violation of that ritual, because the ritual actually depicts that there are 3 people trying to murder Hiram Abiff? Not one. Not one 3 times on 3 different tries, but 3 people. Yeah, and so you see that that's very interesting. But they had to come up with that. But the ritual is working because there is a story behind the story, or there is a story behind the curtain. And the story behind the curtain is one of the stories is the 3 tramps. Because if you really are being a member of the Kennedy assassination, you would be so dumb to hide yourself in a railroad car behind the grassy knoll, would you?
Say, Michael, that scripture is Mark chapter 14, verse 30. And I'll just quickly read it for you.
Would you please wait for me?
Yeah, of course.
What is it, Mark?
Yes.
Chapter?
14?
Yes.
30. 30.
Thanks. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Jesus saith unto him, Verily, I say unto thee that that this day, even in this night, before the cock crow twice, thou shalt deny me thrice.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Okay, I think that's what got me here to say that it was thrice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but simple question. If you would be a part of the assassination of an American president or someone else, then you would hide yourself in a railroad car. You would not flee from the location. No, you would wait, and you would hide yourself in a railroad car and would wait for the train to arrive or wait for the police station that they will pick up, and they will search, of course, the entire area. And of course, if you would be the lone nut assassin, you would not flee from the location, but you would say that, okay, I had a great time in shooting the president, and therefore I would like to go to a theater. I don't know what's in the mind of people, actually, that these people think that this is a usual behavior, the common behavior of somebody who just murdered somebody. Usually you want to get away, you want to be... you want to leave the scene, but you want not to be picked up. So I think that this has just been set up, and this was done on purpose. Yeah? It's just like many, many other deceptions going on here on the DD Plaza. Yeah? But you see that for almost 30 years, the FBI, or in that case, the Dallas police station, did not reveal the identity of these people. Isn't that important? If they would pick up 3 that is kind of lousy guys in a railroad car, wouldn't that be of importance for the Warren Commission? Or would you rather think that the Warren Commission knew exactly what to do and what the outcome was right from the start? And that is my opinion on that. Yeah, if they would have collected all the evidence, then it would have taken much longer. And you see that there's no mentioning of this and no mentioning of the names. But the names must be known right from the start, because these people have been picked up by the police, if you see. So maybe this is also an actor here, but who knows? But you see that this is just one policeman and this is the other policeman. This is just questions. I'm just raising questions. And now I'm not raising questions. Now I'm trying to put your concentration to some very valid points. First of all, we come to Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell. He happened to be, this is German, I'm sorry. He happened to be a roommate of Robert Kennedy, the brother of John F. Kennedy, in 1946. And then in 1961, JFK then made Mr. O'Donnell to his special or personal assistant. And he was preparing the visit of Kennedy to Dallas. And he was moving to Dallas several days before. So he knew exactly the route. He knew exactly the locations. He knew exactly the buildings. Yeah, so he was the one who was responsible for the coordination between the special service, or to be the Secret Service, and all the other people. And so he was the one who was driving behind the JFK presidential limousine in the so-called Queen Mary of the Secret Service. And he was in the few feet apart from the actual scene of the crime. Yeah, and he was alleged to be the one who then ordered the examination of the corpse of Kennedy in a military hospital in Bethesda in Maryland. Afterwards, he was the assistant also of the follow-up president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Yeah, you see from his the enemy of Mr. Kennedy, so to speak. Very interesting, huh? Very interesting. But it gets more interesting because this is a testimony of Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell on the White House on May the 18th, 1964. And a certain Mr. Spector interrogator said, "Would you state your full name for the record, please?" And the answer of Mr. O'Donnell, of course, is Kenneth P. O'Donnell. What were your duties on November the 22nd? The answer comes now, I was the special assistant for the president. I was in charge of his appointments and any itineraries. What's that kind of word, Brett? Could you help out?
Yeah, itineraries.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
That he might had. So I'm just skipping some uninterested remarks here. He said, the Secret Service would time the route. They would work out a motorcade. The Secret Service would time the route. Yeah. So he's pushing his responsibility away to the Secret Service. Yeah. And on the other hand, which is almost more important, is the report of the so-called Warren Commission report. On page 29, we read, at the White House, Kenneth O'Donnell, special assistant to the president, acted as coordinator for the trip, so not only for the route through Dallas, but for the entire trip to Texas. It has been said that it would be automatic for the Secret Service to arrange a route which would, within the time allotted, bring the president through an area which exposes him to the greatest number of people. So that was done on purpose and not by accident. Once again, skipping to the valid points here. Mr. Spector, the interrogator, asked, what were the weather conditions on the arrival at Love Field in Dallas? The reply of Mr. O'Donnell is, the weather was clear, sunny, excellent weather. Question, what decision has been made as to whether to have an open car in Dallas? Answer, the decision has been made to have an open. If the weather was good, he would ride in an open car. Question, and do you recall who made that decision? Answer, well, I would make that decision under normal circumstances, but it was almost an automatic decision then whenever the weather was clear, he preferred to ride in an open car. So once again, it seems to be pushing away the responsibility, but yeah, that's not the big thing. You see that usually Kenneth O'Donnell has been named as the person responsible for the decision that Kennedy was riding in an open convertible. Next question. Do you recall approximately what time the presidential party arrived at Love Field, Texas, Dallas? Answer. I would think it would be around 11 or 11:15. We were on time. And that is absolutely untrue. Remember that Mr. O'Donnell officially was responsible for the entire trip. So he, on that very day when the American president was being assassinated and killed, he should have known when the plane has landed. But he's absolutely stating the incorrect time here. He says 11 or 11:15. This is absolutely incorrect. He says, David Powers was with me in that car of that Secret Service. All the rest were agents of the Secret Service. So the only two people who were not part of the Secret Service agents were Mr. David Powers and Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell, both of them being personal assistants of John F. Kennedy. Yeah, he said, I was seated in a front jump seat on the left-hand side, and on the immediate right it was Mr. David Powers. So these two people are being a member of that Secret Service follow-up car. The question arises from Mr. Spector, interesting name, Spector, huh? Like Spectre from James Bond. Do you recall whether or not the president's automobile made any stops en route from the airport into the downtown area? Answer. I don't recollect clearly. I would be surprised if it did not, but I don't have any clear recollections. Interesting. He could not recollect the exact time of the plane arriving in Dallas Love Field Airport, and he also cannot recollect here if the presidential automobile made a stop. That's the second time he had no exactly recollection of the events of that very interesting day. He said, the nature of the crowds was extremely heavy, one of the heaviest I have seen in any American city. And he says also the American president was extremely popular in Dallas. Question. Tell us what occurred then as you made that turn away from the crowded downtown Dallas area and headed toward the plaza area. Answer. Well, I sat down. I remember saying to Dave Powers that it was a fantastic crowd. He agreed. We turned. I remember the overpass. And then the shots occurred, which at that time I did not know were shots. My first impression was it was a firecracker. And then either somebody said, quote unquote, he has been hit, or I noticed a slump. He had been waving out to the right side of the car, and I noticed him slump over towards Mrs. Kennedy, and I realized then that there had been shots. But as far as that realization occurred, I saw the third shot hit. It was such a perfect shot. I remember I blessed myself. I was rather convinced that it was a fatal blow. And that is the question which I was handing over to you, Brett.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Remember, this is the one who was responsible for the entire trip of Mr. Kennedy. That was the person who was responsible for the trip in Dallas. That was the person who then was in Dallas days before.
This is like a confessional of sorts.
Yeah, and he cannot remember the exact name of the plane arriving at Lafayette, and he cannot recollect his memory, and then he comes up with that solution, or with that, with that statement. It was such a perfect shot. You see, that sounds like admiration.
Yeah. I remember I blessed myself.
Yeah. So bless myself, can it mean that you make the sign of the cross?
Yeah. It's a meritorious work to kill a heretic, like the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right, Michael.
Yeah. Because you see that I have made it here in bold letters, because I was very astonished that from a perspective of somebody who was a personal assistant of the president, there is no regret or what else, or no emotional outburst. But despite of that, in opposition, it sounds like admiration. Oh, it was such a perfect shot. I remember I blessed myself.
Yeah. Startling admission, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very strange. You see, that is absolutely unemotional. And I asked Jörg, and Jörg said, yeah, that sounds like Jesuitical sophistry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So next question, Mr. Spector said, what is your best estimate of the speed of the president's vehicle at that time? The answer of Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell says, well, I would think we probably were going between 15 and 20 up until that moment, and I think he probably had just begun to accelerate, probably up to 25, somewhere in that vicinity. Yeah, but from the official Warren Commission, and we're talking about the Warren Commission interrogation here. From the Warren Commission, from another sheet of Chapter 2, the speed of the limousine, it's been stated officially, quote unquote, a more precise determination has been made from motion pictures taken on the scene by an amateur photographer, Abraham Zapruder. Based on these films, the speed of the presidential automobile is computed at an average speed of 11.2 miles per hour. So there is nothing between 15 and 20 or about 25. Yeah. Once again, the memory is not serving Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell correctly here. That's the third time. So I leave it up to you. And of course, I know, might as well as you know, that the Zapruder film is faked. Yeah, so there are scenes missing in that film, and maybe it has been slowed down, and maybe it has been altered here and there. We will go into this also later in the episodes. But you see that when the official conclusion is that the speed is 11.2 miles per hour, it is nothing between 50 and 20 or about 25. Huh? Because the acceleration is also been visible, more or less, in the Zapruder movie. So what he's actually stating here is between 15 and 25, but it is actually 11. Yeah, so between 15 and 25, the average is about 20, but it was 11. So he's stating almost twice as fast speed as it actually was, even if there is some alteration in that movie. But we are going according to the Warren Commission here. This is the report to the Warren Commission, and this is the report from the Warren Commission. You can easily compare the two of them now. That is absolutely not spot on. And 11 miles per hour, I'll say that several sessions before, that was the song from Was Not Was, that it was about Kennedy, 11.2 miles per hour. Yeah, you can now have also the frames here equivalent, so and so frames, and you can calculate then how much frames there are, and you can calculate the distance, and then you got the average speed, which is 11.2 miles per hour. How hard can it be? But he says 50 to 20 or up to 25. So I'm highly doubting anything that Mr. O'Donnell did or said or felt that day, because it seems a little bit very, very suspicious here. Yeah. How many shots were there all? And he says 3. Mr. Spector once again asks, what is your best estimate as to the total time which elapsed from the first shot to the last shot? And Mr. Donald said, I would say 5 to 6 seconds. Oh, Brett, 5 to 6.
5 plus 6 is 11.
Yes, once again, 11. Yeah. And he says, he then asked, what is your reaction as to the source of the shots if you had one? And he answered, quote, my reaction in part is reconstruction is that they came from the right rear. So it would serve the official explanation of the Texas School Book Depository. Of course, that would be my best judgment, quote unquote. He says he was leaning out waving. He may have just been withdrawing his hand and the shot hit him and threw him to the left. He slumped on Mrs. Kennedy. Question. Were you able to determine a reaction on that slumping movement as to whether it was the first, the second, or the third shot? Answer. It was not the third shot. Whether it was the first or second, I would not know. Question. Do you think it could have been the second shot? Mr. Donald says, yes, I do. If I had to pick one of the two, I think I might have been the second shot. It seemed to be, but again, it is a foggy recollection. Yeah, and that seems to be kind of a trademark of Mr. O'Donnell, that he's got a foggy recollection of the events. When it comes down to the speed, when it comes down to the times, just a foggy recollection. The only thing is absolutely sure that there were 3 shots, and it was between 5 and 6 seconds. He says he could not see the governor. He had no knowledge that he had been hit that time, but one of the agents said the governor had been hit too. Okay. Ask about Mrs. Kennedy. He said, well, he slumped on her. She appeared to be immediately aware that something had happened. Sure, if my husband would slump on me, I would also be aware that something happened. She turned towards him, and then the third shot hit. Obviously, she then knew what happened. She turned, looking at the backup car. Meanwhile, Agent Hill had gotten off the car, starting running up. She was clambering toward the back and reached his hand, and he was on the car. And then he said it accelerated, so the presidential pneumonia accelerated. It would think right about the time that Agent Hill grabbed onto the back of the car, which would be just a few seconds after the last shot. Asking questions is, what speed did the motorcade proceed en route to the hospital? Answer, very rapidly, I would guess between 60 and 70 miles per hour. How long did it take for the motorcade? 5 to 10 minutes. And then he said, we got out of the car, David Powers got out of the car, went over to the president, was not visible to me, and he was crying, he laid on him. So at least there is one who's showing an emotional reaction. And not the reaction, it was such a perfect shot. Huh?
Yeah.
This is just reading between the lines. You see, you got to have a feeling what's going on actually. So then they were on the hospital, etc., etc. And I had seen the shots so clearly, I had a pretty clear view. The first thing I had done, I asked them to get a priest, which I did immediately. Aha, interesting, huh? That's what he was thinking about, to getting a priest. So I went into the room for five doctors here, etc., 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 etc. Okay, so that was that. Yeah, Mrs. Kennedy was covered with blood. That was that. The rest is not that important because you can keep yourself busy, Brett, with that your entire life. Yeah. So then Kenneth O'Donnell said it is about Mrs. Kennedy who picked then the Bethesda Hospital. Interesting. Several minutes ago we learned that it was Kenneth O'Donnell who made the decision. Very interesting. Very interesting. So you see that one is pushing excuses from one to the other. And later on, they arrived at the Lyndon B. Johnson Ranch about 10 p.m. on that evening. Interesting, huh? I knew that the Kennedy also had been planned to stay on the Lyndon B. Johnson Ranch, but it's very interesting when you learn that these people then afterwards met also with Lyndon B. Johnson privately on his ranch in Texas. Huh? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So Mrs. Kennedy was for the first time then accompanying her husband. She was delighted to come. She had not been on a political trip with us for quite a while. Yeah. And so we come to the next character, which is Mr. David Powers. He's also special assistant to JFK. If you would see it on a personal level, the special assistant to President Brett, if it had to be sound a little bit more direct or a little bit mean, what would be another expression for special assistant?
You got me there, Michael.
Yeah, somebody who's keeping you out of trouble, somebody who's arranging things that the public should not know, should not be aware of.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Special assistant. You see that it's not limited also to business deals. It's just also for private matters, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So these people are very, very influential because they decide who's getting in touch with the president or who's close to the president. And and they decide also the trips. So maybe it is some kind of a babysitter. Yeah, so that they say that, no, JFK, don't care, don't. We are in the follow-up car, don't worry. Okay, David Powers, you see the special assistant, somebody who is trying to get JFK out of trouble, maybe, or who decides who's got access to the president. And maybe the two personal special assistants, I have assured the president that don't worry because we are behind you. So we are behind the presidential limousine. Everything has been taken care of. Yes, it did. Everything had been taken care of, but not in the favor of JFK. So now this is his testimony of Mr. Powers, and look at the first sentence. The next day, we proceeded on to Dallas and arrived at Love Field, that's the airport, at approximately 11:30 a.m. So nothing between 11 and 11:15, but 11:30, and that was also scheduled. And there is also a public broadcast that they were a few minutes late, but you see that he can remember it very more precisely than Mr. Kenneth O'Donnell could. He has no foggy recollection. The president and Mrs. Kennedy were in high spirits, and as I traveled in, etc., etc., let's look it up. The crowd in Dallas was very friendly and very enthusiastic. In my opinion, it was twice as large as the crowd that was present when Mr. Kennedy campaigned in Dallas in 1960. Kenneth and Donald and I were observing the size and disposition of the crowd in order to evaluate the local political situation. President Kennedy was sitting on the extreme right-hand side of his automobile with his arm extending as much as 2 feet beyond the right edge of the car, and Mrs. Kennedy was seated on the extreme left of the back car. They were seated as the opposite ends of the back seat in order to give their full attention to the crowds on each side. As we proceed through Dallas, the motorcade slowed down on a number of occasions, but I did not believe it ever stopped. When we passed through the heart of Dallas, the crowds were about 10 deep. When we turned off of Main Street onto Houston and made the sharp swing to the left to Elm Street. At that time, we were traveling very slowly, no more than 12 miles an hour. Interesting, Brad. What did Mr. Kenneth Donald say? 15 to 20 and 25, huh? In accordance with my custom, I was very much concerned about our timing, and at just about that point, I looked at my watch and I noted that it was almost exactly 12:30 p.m., which was the time we were due at the trademark. I commented to Ken O'Donnell that it was 12:30 and we would only be about 5 minutes late when we arrived at the trademark. Shortly thereafter, the first shot went off and it sounded to me as if it was a firecracker. I noted then that the president moved quite far to his left after the shot from the extreme right-hand side where he had been sitting. There was a second shot and Governor Connelly disappeared from sight, and then there was a third shot which took off the top of the president's head and had the sickening sound of a grapefruit splattering against the side of a wall. My total time between the first and the third shot was about 5 or 6 seconds. My first impression was that the shots came from the right and overhead, but I also had a fleeting impression that the noise appeared to come from the front of the area on the triple overpass. This may have resulted from my feeling, and when I looked forward toward the overpass, that we might have ridden into an ambush. So, the conclusion is that he knew exactly it was 12:30 because they were late already. The conclusion is that he exactly said the same as Kenneth O'Donnell with the 5 to 6 seconds. And he said exactly the same, that his impression was that the shots came from the right and overhead. So the official narrative of the Warren Commission. What a coincidence, huh? But they differ in the speed and they differ in the arrival time at the airport at Snuffield. So my first impression is that the two were talking beforehand what to say against the Warren Commission and agreed on the same thing about, yes, the shot came from behind and the shot duration was about 5 to 6 seconds. But Mr. David Powers here is much more spot on with all the times. At about the time of the third shot, the president's car accelerated sharply with the follow-up car driving right behind it. Yes, that was the car where Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. David Powers were in. Mrs. Kennedy climbed onto the back of the car. Perhaps she may have been looking for help, and perhaps she really didn't know what she was doing. I think Special Agent Clinton Hill saved her life by climbing up onto the back of the car and pushing her onto the back seat, because she probably would have fallen off the rear end of the car and would have been right in the path of the other cars proceeding in the motorcade. We proceeded at a high rate of speed to Parkland Hospital. Upon arriving, I raced over to where President Kennedy lay, and Special Agent Hill and I, along with Special Agent Kellerman, placed him on a stretcher. The three of us and Special Agent Greer, that's the driver, pushed him into the emergency area. I stayed with Mrs. Kennedy the entire time at the hospital. And that is, I will have to remember you, please, the one who's been told by Kenneth O'Donnell that he was crying, so he showed an emotional reaction. She went in and out of the emergency room, and when she wasn't in the emergency room, she sat on the chair right outside the emergency room door. I believe Ken O'Donnell went to call the Attorney General as soon as we arrived at the hospital. Sure, that was the brother of JFK. I accompanied the president's body and Mrs. Kennedy on the trip from the hospital to the airport. Some seats were removed from a rear compartment of the presidential plane, and the casket was placed there. On the trip back to Washington, Mrs. Kennedy refused to change her clothes or eat, but did sip some coffee. Upon arriving at Andrews Air Force Base, Mrs. Kennedy declined to take a helicopter, but instead chose, etc., etc. Kenneth and Donald and I stayed with Mrs. Kennedy and the other members of the president's family at Bethesda until the early hours on the morning of November the 23rd. Aha. So, 5 to 6. Keep it simple, stupid. So, 11 is the outcome. This Mr. David Powers is extremely interesting. Kenneth O'Donnell said about him, quote unquote, outside of Bobby, President Kennedy had only one close friend, and that was Dave Powers. On the 22nd assassination day, Powers traveled in a Secret Service car immediately behind the presidential car. Powers later admitted to Tip O'Neill, I told the FBI what I had heard, but they said it couldn't have happened that way and that I must have been imagining things. So I testified the way they wanted me to. I just didn't want to stir up any more pain and trouble for the family, unquote. So, who's lying? President Johnson kept Powers in the White House staff for several months after the assassination. Powers had lunch with Jacqueline Kennedy every day at her house in Georgetown. Powers resigned in 1965 and later helped Robert Kennedy in his attempt to become president in 1968. He's also the curator of the JFK Library and Museum. So much so for the official story. The official story. He's been said as being a close friend of Kennedy's. He was a Roman Catholic, a chief usher at the St. Catherine of Siena Church in Charlestown, and he first met in Kennedy in 1946 already, when JFK was a Democratic candidate, so before he even went on to become a political seat in the Congress. Yeah. He joined Kennedy's campaign after being impressed by a heartfelt speech Kennedy gave to Gold Star mothers who had lost sons in World War II. Yeah, including the older brother of JFK, who also was been lost in World War II on a secret mission. After Kennedy was elected to Congress, Powers was at Kennedy's side every step towards the White House. So you can assume that Kenneth O'Donnell and David Powers were very close to Kennedy, and they knew him from the start, or they have built up his career. Kennedy was very fond of Powers' mischievous sense of humor. That's why you see him here in the background. Powers watched over the presidential need and was always with him on trips around the country and abroad. He was the first to see the president in the morning, the last to see him in the night. I highly doubt that he was the last to see the president in the night. You guess what I'm up to. Historian Robert Dallek wrote that Powers was part of the so-called Irish Mafia, a small group of White House aides who were uncritically loyal to Kennedy and had made his rise possible, and that Powers was the first among equals in his group. The first among equals, primus inter pares. All are equal, but some are more equal than others. That's from The Animal Farm, from George Orwell. Kennedy's speechwriter and special counsel Theodore Sorensen recounted a story from the 1960 presidential campaign in which he did not have a necktie for the meeting, and Dave Powers loaned me one from Kennedy's large traveling collection, assuring me that the senator never wore it. Yes, during the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Powers and Kenneth O'Donnell, another Kennedy aide, were riding in the Secret Service follow-up car directly behind the presidential limousine. That's what we all know. In 1996, and now it gets to the really nitty-gritty of the session, the Assassination Record Review Board released 3 minutes of film footage captured by Powers in Dallas prior to the assassination. Powers and Kenneth O'Donnell co-authored Johnny, We Hardly Knew You. So these two guys, they worked together in writing a book, a best-selling account of their mutual experiences working for Congressman and President Kennedy. Yeah, we can also go in that book, but there is much more coming on. Powers stated that JFK was the greatest man I ever met and the best friend I ever had until the assassination. But Mrs. Judith Campbell Exner, in her autobiography, My Story, alleged that Powers assisted in setting up sexual encounters with President Kennedy. Powers would later claim that Kennedy never had an affair with Exner, but I highly doubt that Mr. Powers was the last one seeing the president every night, because the president was infamous for having sexual relationships with other women, outside his marriage, of course. In her book, Once Upon a Secret, My Affair with President John F. Kennedy, you have to be very aware of the fact that with the name of Kennedy, you can make much, much, much money. So I don't know how substantial her claims are. She says that President Kennedy and David Powers, they were swimming one afternoon in the indoor White House pool, and President Kennedy swam to her and whispered a request to give oral sex to Powers, and that she did so. That is in her book, Once Upon a Secret. Yeah? Yeah. It was a dare, but I knew exactly what he meant. That was a challenge to give David Powers, etc., etc., etc. That's from her book, page 102. Swimming pool mentioned also several times in her book. Theodore Sorensen, so the speechwriter, wrote that he, quote, would not be shocked to learn that Dave Powers had arranged extramarital tryst for President Kennedy. Yeah, everybody who knows the line of events when it comes down to women of Kennedy was also not very surprised. About that film of David Powers from Dallas. The film that he took, the 3-minute film, was been handed over in 1996. Oh, interesting, very interesting. The film stops well before the motorcade reached Dealey Plaza because Powers' camera ran out of film. How convenient, Brett. Can you imagine the possibility of a presidential aide with all his money and his connections? Do you really think he's got only one film or one camera at his disposal? Maybe there are other movies, and I'm quite convinced that there are other movies. But of course, I cannot prove it. That would be just a conspiracy theory. Once again, the film of David Powers stops well before the motorcade reached Dealey Plaza because Powers' camera ran out of film. There is a story on Edition CNN, or Catholic News Network, shows that JFK before assassination, which of course was when displayed on November 21st, 1996, when, of course, that was the day before the assassination, November 21st. So Washington nearly, read that very carefully, Brett, 33 years after John F. Kennedy assassination in Dallas, a 3-minute major film showing some of the final minutes of the president's life was made public Thursday. Friday is the 33rd anniversary of Kennedy assassination. Yeah, with a big celebration for all the people who really succeeded on that very day. With the 33rd years after that. Yeah, 33 degrees, Freemasonry. Anybody who really thinks that it's a coincidence that that happened to be published 33 years later, I don't think so. I don't know what your opinion on that is, but this episode really is Solomonic coincidences. But there's more. It does not show the fatal shooting. There is a small and a large screen version, which actually are 22 seconds, and 22 is also the number of the stairs or the pergola on the Dealey Plaza. But Mr. Powers ran out of film before the motorcade entered Dealey Plaza. Aha, okay. But are you ready, Brett?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please. Okay, yeah. Powers, now 84, began working for Kennedy in 1946 when a Democrat was elected to Congress and was a special assistant to the president when he accompanied Kennedy to Dallas. I started taking pictures when we left Love Field, so the airport. Powers said in an interview with CNN on Wednesday. He took his last pictures at 12:17 p.m., the time identifiable on the clock behind First Lady Jackie Kennedy, he said. Kennedy was shot about 15 minutes later, about 12:30 p.m. And now I leave it up to you to solve the riddle. Don't let me hanging in there, Brad.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. Maybe it's too early for me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know that is a common thing, that it is much more earlier in the United States than it is here in Germany.
Yeah, 7 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 hours. But when it comes down to numbers, I know that you are capable of adding up some numbers, which are 1, 2, 1, and 7.
Yeah, right. So that's 1 plus 2, and 1 and 7 is 11.
Yes, sure. And do you really think that I named that episode Solomonic Coincidences by coincidence?
Oh, goodness. Oh, yeah, that's right.
How many coincidences would you like me to present, huh?
Well, sometimes with the numerology thing, you gotta help me out a little bit here and there because I'm not really too hip with it, you know.
Yeah, but you see that it's very obvious when you see that all the things coming down to the 33rd anniversary and all the things. You see that it's so obvious.
Right.
Yeah, it is too obvious.
I get you now.
Yeah, Power said that he lost the film. It was all with all my papers, and we could never find the damn thing. He said officially, but. Except the fact 33 years later.
Oh, goodness gracious. So never mind that they have the rest of the film of the actual assassination. They'll never let it out, though. That's what they're
somebody, or even some more people have more interesting pictures and movies.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's what I kept Stephanie then busy training into numerology here with the training. You see, when it comes down to that unholy satanic music group called Iron Maiden, they have come up with an album or phrase, actually 2 minutes to midnight, which actually resembles the bulletin of the atomic scientist with their doomsday clock. It is 2 minutes to midnight. You all have to be frightened to death. Yeah. So what is 2 minutes to midnight? It's very interesting because it is another outcome in the American format, but in Europe, you see, we got
23:58. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 24-hour clock.
In the 24-hour, yeah, and then you got 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 8 makes 18 makes 666 once again.
6 plus 6 plus 6. Yeah.
Yeah, but now you got 100 seconds to midnight, which comes up to 86,400 seconds minus 100. That sums up to 86,300. So at the moment you are at 17. But I have this hard time in imagining that they will come up with 10 seconds more. Sometimes. So it's not only 100 seconds, but maybe then 90 seconds in the near future when the new virus is approaching or a meteor is coming or what else. Yeah. So they will come up with some fancy thing once again. Yeah. So you see that this all is fear mongering here. Yeah? The bulletin of the American scientists or the atomic sciences. Sorry. There's also a climate clock. So you got only 7 years left. People in the United States, please be very afraid now. You only got 7 years left to achieve the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Otherwise, everything will go down. Yeah. So the most important number in the world. Okay. That's a climate clock now. This is a climate religion here, actually. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. You see that is very prominent here. Yeah, this is the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, founded by whom, Brett?
Founded by Albert Einstein?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. You see how serious they are when they come up in Einstein, huh? With this fantasy physics.
Oh, and University of Chicago scientists.
Yeah, scientists everywhere.
Hey, what do we know about Chicago? Well, didn't they come up with the NIV from Chicago, a new international version of the Bible? Wasn't that a product of Chicago? I thought I remember something about that.
You tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's all about humanity and the planet. Yeah. These are scientists, huh? Wow. Scientists and a planet. Yes, these are Luciferians. Yeah. Also, they got a board of sponsors, which includes 11. No, of course. Sorry, I can't help it. I'm really sorry. You see, this is not my invention here.
No.
You see that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I didn't mention that in the German session here with 11 Nobel laureates. Yeah, it comes up everywhere. Yeah. So it is about the doomsday clock. It's about the minutes or seconds to midnight, because at midnight something terrible will happen. But of course, anti-Christian singers like Billy Idol, they will admire the midnight hour and say, more, more, more. No, the rebel yell, the yell of the rebel of Nimrod, actually. Yeah. More, midnight. Yes. Yeah, so please stay safe. Yeah, or maybe this smile here is shut up. Yeah? Shut up. Shut up and listen to the authority. Yeah? So that is the last movie of that picture of Mr. Powers. Yeah, remember, it has been found 33 years later, and the camera has been shut down on 12/17. So you got 33 and 11. Yeah, and this is a Freemason ritual. Yeah, and Mr. Powers said in an interview that, during this time Jackie was so brave. Yeah, yeah, she was very brave. Yeah, you wait until we come to that. Yeah, so Mr. Kennedy is not better or worse or what else than other people, because all the Kennedys also been hungry for power, of course. This is, for example, his younger brother, Robert Kennedy, making the same gesture as Winston Churchill, victory for Satan. Has nothing to do with peace, huh? If you really believe that there's something to do with peace, then what does peace have to do with two horns? Huh? Really, you have to tell me. In the book, The Watergate, The Hidden History, yeah, it's been mentioned here that Robert Kennedy, for Robert Kennedy, the whole matter of his brother's murder was extremely problematic. On one hand, RFK told Arthur Schlesinger that he wondered how long he could continue to avoid commenting on the Warren report, given the spate of books pointing out its flaws. And also there is another big problem. In 1962, the Secret Service transferred the autopsy photographs and X-rays and certain vital documents and biological materials to the custody of the Kennedy family at the request of Robert F. Kennedy. According to a government investigator, RFK also obtained crucial physical evidence such as JFK's brain and tissue samples. On February the 18th, 1966, RFK had a bronze coffin that transported JFK's body from Dallas to Washington, taken from the basement of the National Archives, then loaded with sandbags and riddled with holes and dumped from the Air Force C-130 into the Atlantic Ocean, as later reported by CNN. Isn't that a strange coincidence?
What?
I'm just quoting a book.
Oh, that is strange.
Mm-hmm. And then on October the 31st, 1966, what's that kind of a date, Brett? October the
Antichrist.
31st.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's October the 31st.
Oh, October the 31st is the day that Martin Luther published his 95 Thesis.
Yeah, and that's what sets you apart from the regular American who would say, yeah, that's the night before Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Halloween, yeah. Halloween night, yeah.
Yeah. So on Reformation Day, 1966.
Yeah, it's known as Reformation Day, right.
Yeah. The day after RFK remarks about the Warren report to Schlesinger, RFK ordered the lawyer for the Kennedy estate, Jack Miller, who formerly headed RFK organized crime effort, to transfer some of the autopsy evidence to the official custody of the National Archives. However, RFK didn't include some of the most crucial evidence, like the steel container that apparently held JFK's brain and tissue samples taken from around the wounds. Also missing from the transfer were some of the autopsy photos, including those of JFK's open chest and others that official photographs had taken at the Bethesda autopsy. And don't you even think that there has nothing to do with the killing of his older brother when he was assassinated in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles in 1968. And we have talked about that several times before, that he said among his closest friends that he wanted to reopen the investigation of the murder of his older brother. Yeah, so that given the information now here, if that is correct from that book, that he had also collected some major evidence, and that you can imagine yourself what he have done, what he should do in case that he would be elected president. And I think that the powers to be, they had to avoid it at all costs. Yeah, and so you see that we are focusing on the people in the background of Mr. Schlesinger and Mr. Powers and Mr. O'Donnell, and not on the people who are smiling into the camera like JFK and like Lyndon B. Johnson, huh? Because now, remember, Mr. David Powers was already busy with Mr. Kennedy in 1946. And now we got a very interesting thing. I'm sorry that I only had given that information in German, but you can look it up on your own. Mr. Kennedy has written a book called Civil Courage, and I will show you then the next page the official German title about it, about the situation in the life of known United States American politicians, and it said that they have to decide between their political party and their conscience. And he received in 1957 the Pulitzer Prize on that. But in 2008, his former colleague, Ted Sorensen, he said that he wrote the book, actually, so a book where Mr. Kennedy has received a Pulitzer Prize for. So I think that was a very crucial information. I said, what? Oh, that is very interesting that Mr. Kennedy did not reveal that he did not write the book, but instead to become the president of the United States, he had to have much benefits on his side, and therefore he lied actually about the authorship of his book, which was not his book, but was the book of Mr. Kennedy. Yeah. He claimed, Mr. Sorensen, which was one of the main political speech writers of Mr. JFK, he claimed address in his 2008 memoir that his book won Kennedy the Pulitzer Prize for biography in 1957. So Sorensen helped actually directly Kennedy's way to success, and he helped draft Kennedy's inaugural address and was also the primary author of Kennedy's 1962 "We Choose to Go to the Moon" speech. So it was not the words of Mr. Kennedy, but the words of Mr. Ted Sorensen. Yeah, so his duty was to build up Mr. Kennedy as the next presidential candidate. Yeah? And now it gets really weird, because if I switch back to the English-American Wikipedia, during 1977, Jimmy Carter, I said, what? Jimmy Carter? Beware of Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter was a 33-degree Freemason. Stepping back. During 1977, Jimmy Carter nominated Sorensen as director of CIA. I said, what? He used to be a speechwriter of JFK, and then he was being nominated as the director of the CIA? But the nomination was withdrawn without or before a Senate vote. Sorensen's help with explaining Ted Kennedy's Chippewa incidents was cited as a factor of Senate opposition to his nomination as a CIA director. Sorensen, in his autobiography, attributed the loss of Senate approval for his nomination for CIA director to his conscientious objector status at the youth, his two failed marriages, okay, asked Mr. Clinton, that does not affect anything, any sexual behavior, and his writing an affidavit in defense of releasing Daniel Ellsberg's Pentagon Papers. But you see, it is very strange when somebody who is just officially a speechwriter for the president is then being trying to get over the job for the Central Intelligence Agency. And that was done by the high-ranking Freemason Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter has also some other special assistants, like, for example, this Mr. Brzezinski. Brzezinski was been from the Polish noble house from Ukraine, actually. And also, this Mr. Brzezinski here on that picture, Mr. Brzezinski was one of the advisors also of Mr. John F. Kennedy. Yeah, so these are the people behind it who are also been handing over some ideas and politics behind the scene. And JFK is just the one who is promoting the things in the open and smiling and waving to the crowd. But the speech is not of him, and the ideas most likely are also not his ideas. Yeah, because this Brzezinski was advisor of the campaign of Lyndon B. Johnson. And also was some of the advisor of the United States President Jimmy Carter. And also he was busy in the campaign of John F. Kennedy. Yeah. And then he was erecting the Trilateral Commission in 1973. With the help of David Rockefeller, he financed the organization Trilateral Commission here. Trilateral, huh? Trilateral means 666. It's like also the sun rays, or would you like to say the corona around the sun symbol of the Jesuits here, where the false explanation of Codeword Babylon is about Iris Horus-Set, and then you would be directed to the Freemason connected, because they also worship every supreme being. And if you count the number of rays, there are 36. And if you sum up 1, 2, 3, plus 4, plus 5, etc., to 36, you also get 666. So this is the sun god. Yeah? And Trilateral Commission, every time you see 3 identical symbology, is also 666, and it's always the same. In the book Seeds of Destruction by a certain William Engdahl, who of course has been accused as being a conspiracy nut, there you find a quote also of one of the presidential advisors. Here it is Mr. Kissinger, and he said, if you control oil, you control nations. If you control food, you control people. And isn't that what is happening at this very moment in 2022? That the oil prices are rising up, and that there is problem with the wheat and a problem with the food supply all over the world. And this is a remark here from, I remember correctly, from the 1970s. In 1976, the elected United States President, Jimmy Carter, he nominated Ted Sorensen as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Here you see Carter, there you see Sorensen. There you see a 33-degree Freemason. Can you think of another American president who was present at the time in Dallas at the shooting in Dealey Plaza, who was very highly recognized for that, Brett? Who later also went on to become the head of the CIA?
Oh boy, no. Let me think. No.
I can assist you.
Go ahead. I was just going to say.
Yeah? You were just going to say.
Bush Sr., yeah?
Yeah, Bush Sr.
Of course.
Yeah.
That would have been my guess, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not proven, you see. That's just a miserable picture. I will insert it here because I know I've got, this is that picture here, yes. And there's also a letter of a certain Mr. Bush from the CIA concerning this, yeah. So many people say there or claim that is George Herbert Walker Bush there, standing there in his posture there. Yeah, so we do not know if that's real, but apart from that picture also, there is a letter concerning Dallas. But it's very interesting because when you go into the ritual or you go into the assassination of Kennedy, you see there are certain American presidents involved. First of all, of course, Lyndon B. Johnson, the runner-up, or then the vice president, and then later on becoming the president of the United States officially, and Mr. Nixon as well. Then you got Mr. Bush. And it's very interesting when you see the connection that Mr. Bush was the director of the CIA, and then and then later on Sorensen was been nominated, and Sorensen was of course part of the team of Kennedy, and he wrote of course speeches for Kennedy, one of the most prominent speeches of Kennedy, this on inauguration speech as well as his moon speech, and there is much more coming up soon. But the problem was that the Ted Kennedy, so the younger brother's Chappaquiddick incidents, was cited as a factor of opposition to his nomination as CIA director. Yeah, because it has been said or claimed in the German Wikipedia that Sorensen could not be nominated because he had refused to fight as a soldier. And of course, the CIA is not a friendly, peaceful organization. It is the Central Intelligence Agency. It's been founded by Knights of Malta. Yeah, so when there is a knight who refuses to fight, then it can't be the head of an army, huh? But one of the main things is that Sorensen helped cover up the things of the so-called travel accident at Chappaquiddick from the younger brother of JFK and RFK, and this is Ted Kennedy. Or this is his car, or what has been left over from his car, actually. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but Ted Kennedy escapes, woman dies, and car plunges into Vineyard Pond. There is a car in the water. And I say to avoid the obvious, in a succession of John and Robert. That happened here in 1969. Well, John F. Kennedy was been killed in 1963. Robert Kennedy was been killed in 1968. And that Chappaquiddick accident happened to be in 1969. Why in 1969? Well, you see that they had a celebration with the former team secretaries of his deceased or killed brother, and one of the participants was a certain Mary Jo Kopechne. And the German newspaper has claimed that that happened late at night at 11:15. 11:15 in 24 format would again result in 11, but on the 18th of July. Now you can say yourself, okay, 18th of July, okay, 666, but what's the deal? Because every month bears the 18th. But I show you one other thing, because there is also a Kennedy Space Center, which has been named after the killed assassin president, Kennedy Space Center, which is a space railway station. I don't know what railway station has to do with space, but nevertheless, yeah. And this is very interesting because the director then between 1962 and 1974 was a certain German Kurt Heinrich Debus, and he has been proclaiming and he has been publishing a paper called Launching a Vision. So it had nothing to do with the supernatural, No, it's not just the old meaning, but the newspeak meaning, of course, since 1926, meaning statesman-like foresight, political sagacity, is attested from 1926. And now you compare the dates. That so-called accident happened on the 18th of July, 1969. But the moon travel, or what else to say about it? That started on the 16th of July and ended officially on the 20th of July. Yeah? So that was right in the middle of that moon fake landing from the National Aeronautics and Space Agency, or administration actually. Yeah, so that the people were looking into the sky instead of looking into Lake Spread.
Wow.
So what better timing than to do that in the time where the American audience was in a state of arousal, in a state of frantic, in a state of
delusion.
Yeah, also delusion, yes, of course, but they were, of course, proud. Yeah, our boys are going to the moon, because President Kennedy had not only proposed, but
what does
promised.
the Bible say about pride, Michael?
Yes.
Pride comes before a fall. I think it's in the book of Proverbs.
Yeah. You see that these so-called moon landing, we know that it's a fake, of course. It's biblically a fake. It is science-like, physically a fake. Yeah. But the serial number of the Saturn rocket is SA506. Brad? It's 5 plus 6?
11.
Yeah, of course, and we know that it's a Freemason mission, so to speak. and the time when they spent on the moon, they claim it is 21 hours and 36 minutes, which equals 1,260 minutes plus 36 minutes. Sums up to 1,296 minutes, and you get the same result all over again. It's always the same. And you cannot prove it, how long the duration was when they were originally on the moon, because there is, I guarantee you, that was 0. It was not 21 hours, it was 0. Nada.
Yes, that's right. They just want you to believe that. They need you to believe that, just like the Freemasons teach.
Yeah, and And at the time of the alleged moon travel, Mr. Buzz Aldrin was a 32-degree Freemason, and afterwards he became a 33-degree Freemason because he did a great service to Freemasonry in making the illusion alive that he was one of the first guys on the moon.
That sign he's showing right there looks like a pretty good hoodwink to me. What do you think, Michael?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure, but we have covered that also in our American Rituals episode. So
right.
that's not the news, just repetition here that you see that it's all connected. 666 sign, 666 and 11 for the Freemason. It's always the same. You see, this is an actor. That's the same as here, a German actor, which is a very funny actor here with his helmet on his Hermes or Mercury helmet. Yeah, you see that these are all actors. Yeah, but this one is more famous, and he's also been better paid, I guess. Yeah. So this is Kennedy's speech, which actually was not his speech. It was once and for all the speech which Mr. Ted Sorensen has written down or pinned down for Kennedy. And he's speaking here in that speech at 8 minutes and 54 seconds. He asks, and they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Well, biblically, what is the highest mountain, Brett?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, the highest mountain is the mountain where God lives.
Mm-hmm.
Or where God comes down to hand over, for example, the 10 Commandments to Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's speaking here about an encounter to God, to climb the highest mountains. Of course, usual people will say that, okay, he's talking about the highest mountain, the Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. Okay. But if you're not convinced about this, you might be convinced about the next episode here. You see that in 50 minutes and 41, he speaks of new metal alloys, and now this is his speech. But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not been yet invented. Capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch. You see, that is not the speech of Mr. Kennedy. He's delivering the speech, but it's not the original words. The words are coming from Mr. Ted Sorensen. Yeah? Ted Sorensen. Yeah. Capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than I have ever been. How would he know? Does that look like, I remind you, I will copy paste here. Yeah? That is about the rocket, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not been invented. Yeah, and then they come up with that fancy dress here, which does not look very tightly fit. Or do you see any pressure in that? Huh? You see that the trousers, it does not seem as there were pressure in it. And now then you ask yourself, or you ask Mr. and Mrs. Google about that, and they say that in direct sunlight it can, on the moon, it can achieve 130 degrees Celsius. Well, 130 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit. Sorry, I have forgotten Celsius to Fahrenheit, but we can do that on the live session. Yeah, you see, these are 266 degrees Fahrenheit in direct sunlight on the moon. Okay? And that is what they have been equipped with. Oh, great! Yeah, but also the temperature in the in the universe, so not on this moon, is minus 270 degrees Celsius. So once again, we talk about the minus degrees here. 217 is minus 454 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, so that is what the rocket must be capable of. Yeah, and 266 degrees Fahrenheit plus is what the astronaut, so to speak, must be getting rid of, to dissipate the heat. So absolutely no problem. And in that environment, you can also take pictures. Yeah, sure. And of course, you don't see any stars. Yeah, don't see any stars. Yeah. Oh, my. So this Sorensen was been a political advisor also to the South African president Nelson Mandela. Let me tell you and let me show you that Mr. Nelson Mandela was Knights of Malta, as well as the killed Egyptian chief Anwar el-Sadat. Yeah, and also then he was busy with supporting Barack Obama. And then in 1976, he was been nominated by Jimmy Carter with a 33-degree Freemason as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Yeah, but he could not make it because there was an accident with Mary Jo Kopechne for the U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy presidential campaign. Oh, do I smell something fishy here, Brett? So JFK the president has been shot. RFK wanted to become president in 1968 and had been shot. And then in 1969 already, Ted Kennedy was senator. So the logical conclusion is that they had to get rid of Mr. Ted Kennedy, one way or the other. And one way was to avoid his presidential campaign of Ted Kennedy. And what better thing to do than to get rid of his political campaign and political power than to confront him with an accident that he was to blame about the killing of another person, so that he was acting irresponsible on that moment. And this Mary Jane Kopechne was a secretary of his brother, and she was a devout Roman Catholic. Yes. So this death or crash or whatever you would like to call it resulted in the death of the 20-year-old passenger Mary Jo Kopechne, who was trapped inside the vehicle. And this, of course, is the official Wikipedia explanation. Because, and now it gets really strange, Kennedy left the scene and he could escape that car, but there are so many interesting things about it. Some say that he was not aware that Mary Jo Kopechne was in the car. Others said that he was too exhausted. You see that you won't never find the truth. Yeah, you will never find the truth. Yeah, because that was national news that influenced Kennedy's decision not to run for president. And I think that was the intention of that incident. You see, I can be wrong, but you see that it's logical to conclude this. It's logical to conclude this. Yeah. I have to translate it. Sorry, because I could not make it in time. He said I wasn't familiar with the street, and he had no remembrance, no memory how he could get out. Huh? But instead of alarming people, he just went back to the party. And all the other things you can also look up for yourself. Yeah. But the judge, Mr. James Boyle, he had doubts on Kennedy's claims. He said, Kennedy knew Chappaquiddick Island very well, despite the fact that Kennedy himself claimed that he was not familiar with the street. Yeah, because at that day on the accident, he was twice been seen on that very road, the Dyke Road. Yeah, to go to the swimming to the beach. Yeah, so of course he's not speaking the truth here. Yeah, and all the people, they could not get it how Kennedy could escape from the car, because when the car was being tossed out of the water, all doors were closed and sealed and locked. Or locked is the correct term, verschlossen, locked. Yeah. So how can a 6'2" tall big man get out of the car when a 5'2" slim girl cannot succeed? Yeah.
Well, that only obvious thing I can think of, Michael, is that he was never in the car to begin with. Right.
That's the same conclusion that I have told to people in the German session of that. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only conclusion. Because once when a car has been drowned, yeah, there's so much pressure that you can't get out of the car.
Right.
You cannot get out of the car. You cannot get the door to open. Yeah. You cannot get the car to open, but you see that he was not in the car, so that was more or less a sacrifice, and that was more or less something to get rid of the presidential ambition of Ted Kennedy.
Well, the only way you could really do it is to smash a window and wait for all the water to come in, breathe in, hold your breath, and then just swim out.
Once again, why a 6'2" tall guy can make it and a 5'2" girl can't? So maybe she was under the influence
Yes.
Or she was hindered, or else. I don't know. But it's absolutely not logical to conclude that that happened according to Wikipedia. There must be something else. And of course, that hindered Mr. Ted Kennedy to run for the presidency. And I think that was the desired outcome just from the start. Yeah, they hindered also his older brother, Robert Kennedy, to run for the presidency in 1968. Yeah. So that is the logical conclusion to that. They also did the same to Mr. Ted Kennedy, although somebody else had to be killed, but not Mr. Kennedy himself. Okay? So you have to go according to their rituals. Yeah, so they sacrifice people. And when you see the 666 sign here between in the movie from Oliver Stone, JFK, it's the same symbol when it comes down to who had the power to cover it up. Of course, that's a religious issue here. 666, the sun god, and of course, Dealey Plaza is also about Osiris, the 666 sun god. And then you have the same symbol here on Buzz Aldrin, 666, and of course, he's been riding the Apollo mission, the Roman god of light. With the Saturn rocket, Saturn means Satan, and then this male object of the phallus, which is the rocket, then has been in contact with the lunar crater on the moon. So a male object into a female object, and you can guess what the outcome is. Of course, that is a fertility rite. And that is why Mr. Edwin Aldrin, himself a 33-degree Freemason, like Jimmy Carter and like the FBI director J. Edgar Hoover at the time of the assassination of Kennedy, is here presented in the world-famous Stonehenge. And he says, move your ass to Mars. What he actually means is Mars is the Roman god of war. So be prepared to have war. So everything they mentioned with Mars, and it was so hilarious because Stephanie showed me also a picture today. I think it was Mars. They have then a picture of a door now in Mars. You see that they have found a picture at Mars. Yeah, and I think that Stephanie also told me that there was a plant found somewhere
on the moon.
On the moon, they found a plant on the moon. Yeah, which moon, huh? Yeah, and now that a secret doorway built by aliens spotted in the image of Mars. Oh, the so-called green man, huh? My. What Mr. Freemason Buzz Aldrin does not tell you is that Stonehenge was a temple of the sun. And you can assume that it's very highly likely that they also have then sacrificed humans there, or people.
Yeah, Michael, as you say, as we say, all of us that are researchers, you got to do your own research. So if you know that this is the temple of the sun, would you take Buzz Aldrin seriously anyway?
It's very obvious, but you have to be very familiar with symbology. And most of the people, they don't know anything about it because it is not non-educated in schools.
And well, yeah, it's the same today as it was back in the pagan Roman Empire. You know, it's bread and circus.
Yeah.
Same tactics.
Yeah, but bread with B-R-E-A-D, huh?
Yeah.
So you see that also Elon Musk, and so all into the transhumanism, and also to get rid of any divinity, that you should not be contacted with God or Jesus Christ. Especially, you see all the symbology flashing up here. This very interesting video. Can advise you to look for it. What Elon Musk said was jaw-dropping. This is wild. Take a listen. Very interesting videos. Very recently, I think it was been published 2 days ago or so. Sorry, Thursday. I think 3 or 4 days ago. So coming back, and we are on our way to the end of the session, I think in 15, 20 minutes or so. This is a Volkswagen Beetle bug.
If you don't mind, before we get too far away from that topic we just quickly touch on Elon Musk here. Yeah. Our friend Daryl Eberhardt recommended we watch or listen to a session that Chris Pinto did on what was it, the title of that one, a couple weeks back, and it was he was touching on Elon Musk.
So it was a Noise of Thunder radio, I presume.
Yeah, Noise of Thunder.
Yeah.
And I suggest that everyone go look up that episode. Let me find out what that was. You continue, Michael.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to our next subject, or actually the same subject here, because that was just another thing coming up. This is the Volkswagen Bug or Beetle nowadays. Yeah, you see that famous little car who was sold in very high numbers there. This is a Volkswagen Beetle, very famous for Summer of Love and Woodstock and all the things. And they made an advertisement, and look at that advertisement. If that is not revealing, I don't know what is. They say, if Ted Kennedy drove a Volkswagen, he'd be president today. And that is the very outcome, the conclusion that I have made just right from the start. But you see it here, you hear it here from Volkswagen itself. Yeah. If he, speaking of Ted Kennedy, been smart enough to buy a Volkswagen, he never would have gotten into hot water. Yeah. I don't think they would dare to publish an advertisement like that in 2022. I'm absolutely positive on that. But isn't that hilarious that you see that is absolutely the same conclusion, that everybody with a clean mind must come up with. Yeah. So forget all the exoteric people say that this is CIA history, this is that, etc. You see that if you got somebody who is officially a speechwriter for Kennedy, and then he's been presented with the office of the president of the CIA, the intelligence agency of the United States, so an intelligence agency of the Knights of Malta, that means that either Mr. Ted Sorensen, who officially only was a speechwriter, had to be a Knight of Malta, so a Roman Catholic knight, or had become a Roman Catholic knight. So it's very interesting. But you did not see what I was looking into, because at the moment we are just waiting for Brett to come up with this.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is Chris Pinto's Noise of Thunder radio broadcast was done on April 29, 2022. And the title of it is Musk, Russia, and Nuclear War. So I think, it's interesting to go check out and see what he has to say, because, yeah, there's SoundCloud. There's also, I believe it's on his website too. His Noise of Thunder radio website too, I think, as well. But
you would advise another link. You see here.
Yeah, there it is.
His own link. Yes.
Yeah, either one. I mean, I listen to SoundCloud, so that's how I listen to it. But
okay.
Yeah, you can download it here. You just got to click in there a couple times.
I don't know if
there it is on SoundCloud too. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So. Yeah, it was a really good one. He actually talks about what Elon Musk's girlfriend is into, and I think that's very important for people to know. Have you listened to that one, Michael?
No, not yet. I've just have.
Yeah, you should check that out too.
I have listened to some other things, and I had very few times lately. And I know that there is some issue with his grandfather also. So this is a very interesting family. But of course, if he is officially the most wealthiest man on earth, then you know what it's all about. It's about for the love of money is the root of all evil, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Just take a listen.
And also he's promoting RNA vaccines, no? Big time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, Elon Musk is definitely on the agenda for sure.
Yes. And now we're coming to the last topic of that episode. You see that it's been called Solomonic Coincidences, not by coincidence. From that book, JFK Conservative from Ira Stoll, reread on page 182. Kennedy's own watchman failed him. 9 agents of the Secret Service detail had been out drinking past midnight. One was out until 5 a.m. that morning. The FBI Dallas office had a file on Lee Harvey Oswald. That's, of course, it's also yet here deception. The FBI knew Oswald had a job at the Texas Border Patrol, blah, 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 blah. But the main thing is that Kennedy's own watchman failed him. Yes, that is correct. And that is also not by coincidence. Because what we are missing is the sentence which came before. The trademark speech concluded with a quote from Psalm 127. I said, what? There is a memory plate, or there is an engravement here on the very Dealey Plaza. When you see it, it's almost exactly at the spot where JFK was been killed. And this is part of his speech, which he never held. Actually, that speech nowadays has been published from JFK with an artificial robot or so, who's been feeding with speeches from JFK and then trying to imitate JFK as if he had held that speech. But that is the speech at the trademark where they were heading to 5 minutes later. If the president would have survived that assassination, or the assassination would have never taken place, then that was the speech that he was about to be held. I don't know if it was Mr. Sorensen who came up with that speech, but it is highly likely because Mr. Sorensen was being the one who was nominated with the CIA. So he's very close ties with the Roman Catholic Church. And look at that speech. The last part of that speech, or the speech in general, is we in this country, in this generation, are by destiny rather than choice the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may be worthy of our power and responsibility, that we may exercise our strength with wisdom and restraint, and that we may achieve in our time and for all time the ancient version on peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That must always be our goal, and the righteousness of our cause must always underlie our strength. For as was written long ago, except the Lord keep the city, the watchmen wake it, but in vain. And that is Psalms 127. A song of degrees for Solomon. And the entire ritual of the assassination of John F. Kennedy was a ritual of the Freemasonry of the third degree of the so-called Master Mason, and it is about Hiram Abiff, the so-called chief architect of Solomon's temple. So I highly suggest that you start to think about that even the speech he would be about to deliver has something to do with the assassination itself, because it resembles highly on Solomon. And how many speeches are they of an American president in general, or JFK especially, dealing with the Psalm of Solomon, when it is about a Freemason temple with the Solomonic ritual of the killing of the president? It is key to understanding that nothing happens by coincidence. And also, that also has some very bad taste in it, because when you know that Kennedy's watchmen failed, then that makes more sense than ever. Yeah? So, who wrote speeches for JFK? Theodore Chaikin Sorensen was an American lawyer, writer, and presidential advisor. He was a speechwriter for President John F. Kennedy, as well as one of his closest advisors. President Kennedy once called him his intellectual blood bank. Yeah, and maybe that has also a very strange explanation about that. Remarks prepared for delivery at the trademark in Dallas, November 22. So that would be the speech he would be about to give a few minutes later, but he never could make it because he was killed before to deliver that speech, which contained, in the last part of the speech, the Psalm 127 of Solomon. And so at the start of the session, we were going into the rituals of Hiram Abiff, and this is about the Solomonic temple. Yeah, Hiram Abiff is a centrist character, etc. Hiram is presented as a chief architect in King Solomon's temple, and this is out in the open. This is visible to every tourist there. visible to every tourist. Yeah? Compare that, please. The central understanding about the killing of Kennedy is that it was a religious ritual. And who carries out a religious ritual other than a religious organization? It is not known to me that Lee Harvey Oswald was such a clever guy who was a prominent member of a religious party. If he was FBI, then be it so. If he was CIA, then be it so. But he was not a member of the Freemasons, up to my knowledge, and he was not a high-ranking clerical official in any ways. So, you make up your mind who actually killed Mr. Kennedy, but I'd say that the people who wrote his speeches, they knew something in advance because they knew that Kennedy's watchmen would fail him. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchmen wake it but in vain. And so they assume that on that day, November the 22nd, the Lord did not keep the city, and the watchmen wake it but in vain. So it was Mr. Sorensen and some other fellows, but Mr. Sorensen is very interesting because next to Sorensen, Richard Goodwin was Kennedy's best writer, but he has a bunch of writers. If you would find out who has written that speech on the Dallas Trade Mart, you would have a very interesting find. But we do not have to know who did it, but we know that there is a connection between the ritual and between the speech. And this is out in the open. Yeah. So they do not hide that. They do not hide it. They show it right in the open, except that they speak only of an excerpt from that speech that President Kennedy was to deliver. Yeah, but of course they do not mention the psalm and they do not mention Solomon in it. Do your own research. Don't rely on me, don't rely on Brad, do your own research. You know that the Kennedy Bible was a Douay-Rheims Bible of the Fitzgerald family. So you know that there were Jesuit ties everywhere. And you really believe that there were no Jesuitical speechwriters there and no people who in power who knew exactly what Kennedy was about to do if he would be elected president. So they did avoid the second period of the presidency of JFK, as well as Robert Kennedy becoming president, as well as Ted Kennedy becoming president. That's obvious, I think. If you look down to Freemasonry, and your country has been founded on Freemasonry as a disguise for the cover-up for the Roman Catholic Church, actually, there's King Solomon and Solomon everywhere. There's Solomon everywhere. Solomon lodges, yeah, Solomon rides. Yeah, also in Ezekiel 33, we know that this was just a very prominent verse, highly regarded by our beloved brother Daryl Eberhard. Yeah, that watchmen have to blow the trumpet. But they did not do it on purpose. If my sources are correct, then the head of the Secret Service ordered all the Secret Service to stand down and not to move. Yeah, what do you come up with? What kind of conclusion? That there was a low nut from Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald. Did Lee Harvey Oswald write his speeches to JFK? Did Lee Harvey Oswald choose the route what the president wanted to go or had to go in the Dealey Plaza? Did Lee Harvey Oswald choose that the Secret Service was standing down? Did Lee Harvey Oswald decided that where to start? Actually, it is about all the things in the Bible. It is all about religious wars. It's all about religious assassination here. It is so obvious when you look from a biblical standpoint, and we are doing that on Sabbath. Yeah, this is the speech undelivered. Yeah, 1963, 11/22. Makes 33, of course. That is TX, Texas trademark undelivered. JFK Library, official source. I'm not speaking here about any foggy recollection of things. I'm speaking about facts. I'm just simply speaking about facts. This is the actual speech he was about to deliver. And you see the last part, this is the one who has been depicted in the Didi Plaza. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchmen wake it but in vain. So it's up to you to conclude the meaning of that session of Kennedy. It's really up to you. I'm closing it down now, and I'm handing it over back to my beloved brother Brett. Yeah, but I'm closing it down because I just want to show you what is going on behind the lines. And of course, I can't make that deep research, which I would love to do, because I cannot get in touch with several documents I would love to see, because I'm just doing it here from my computer in Germany. If I would be on the spot, actually, and I would know many peoples, I don't know what then the outcome would be. But maybe sometimes it's better to have a little bit distance between that. But I don't think that the powers to be are really liking my kind of research here. So this is a ritual. And in the next session, we will go into the actual killing of the president. And I think, therefore, there will also be much more interesting information. I hope this was an interesting session for you. And I know that was not much Bible in it, maybe, but I had my reasons to call this episode the Solomonic Coincidences. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, and looking forward to next time when I team up with Brett, and I'm handing it over to my beloved brother Brett to close it down. Maranatha from Germany.
Thanks, Michael. You know, it's interesting you bring up, Solomon, because if you've ever looked at a Freemasonic Bible, the first thing that's on those pages is the Solomon's Temple. So it's obvious they want to worship, the temple in the style of King Solomon back in the old days, way back, thousands of years ago. And it's pretty obvious that they were pretty envious of everything Solomon had, that just kind of speaks volumes about the kind of society we live in today. And I know you'd mentioned early on, Michael, about the Brother's Keeper being in the, was it a motto or a title of the 31st?
No, it is just the title, the 31st degree in the northern jurisdiction of Freemasonry.
Yeah, that's really
it has everything to do with religion, the Freemason stuff. Look at the degrees.
Of course. But it's not pure religion. Obviously, it is perverted. It is perverted. And that's kind of the problem here, is that if any one of us individuals as a member of the body of Christ want to get things correct or get things in proper order, then we have to refer to the Bible and start making sense out of things in our own realms, in our own lives, in our own personal, private spaces, because this life is a mess, Michael.
Yeah,
we're living in a mess,
mm-hmm.
and it's not getting any better. It just keeps getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is bringing a lot of clarity, having these sessions with you, Michael, as far as, kind of putting the pieces back together of what happened in, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the millennium, so-called 2010s, and now we're in the 2020s. Are we seeing a rise to the repeat of 1920, the roaring 20s back here in the United States? Very could just be all planned by design, couldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking too. It's just part of the plan. And I just wanted to close the session today with a quick reading of Proverbs 16. And wait for Michael to get the Bible up. Proverbs chapter 16. We'll start at verse Oh, let's see. Let's start at verse 11. How about that? Let's start at verse 11. A just weight and balance are the Lord's. All the weights of the bag are his work. It is an abomination to kings to commit wickedness. For the throne is established by righteousness. Now there's something, isn't it? Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right. The wrath of a king is a messenger of death, but a wise man will pacify it. In the light of the king's countenance is life, and his favor is a cloud of the latter rain. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and get understanding rather to be chosen than silver. The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul. And yes, Michael, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Better is it to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than divide the spoil with the proud. Yeah, it just keeps going and going and going. Book of Proverbs is full of, God's wisdom. That's how Solomon got all his riches. But did he give it back to the Lord?
But it is endlessly. I'm just doing it, Kennedy, especially and in detail, because it just serves my research for years. And also this is a interesting thing to do in German and in English. And it has to do with religion, and especially with religion. And that is the key thing which interested me right from the start to do Kennedy. You see, doing so many sessions about Kennedy has nothing to do with my interest in politics whatsoever.
No,
it is my interest in truth and in the religion, that we really see that all the things have a religious background which is unknown to people, hid from the public eye, and it has everything to do with religion. The entire world, the entire system is running on religion. Stephanie just handed me over her smartphone, and it depicts a picture of, for example, with the plant on the moon, which the Chinese allegedly have planted. And also there is another picture. I was being curious, and I typed upon that, and I pressed upon it, and it says that with Artemis, we are coming back to the moon. This time we are coming. Yeah, so the rocket called Artemis. And Artemis is, of course, one of the main goddesses of the Greek pantheon, or the Greek Olympus. It's the goddess of hunt, of the forest, of birth, and of the moon. Yeah, so it is, once again, it is not Apollo. Yeah, it is not the Roman god of light, but now it's the Greek goddess of the moon. Yeah, it's always the same. And what do people do when they look upon television? Oh, I'm in the alpha state. Oh, this is so beautiful. Oh, all the colors, all the music. Ooh, yeah, they are totally disillusioned. These people are totally deceived.
Right. I mean, that's all we get in this life is everything but the truth.
Yes.
When it comes down to, just practical, natural, quote unquote, natural surroundings. You participate in the regular things. Yes, Michael.
Yeah. More than 50 years after, now it comes data protection except. More than 50 years after the first landing, people shall enter the moon. The name of the mission is Artemis. This time we come to stay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, science fiction. Yeah, and you see that all the Kennedy sessions, I'm doing that on a purpose, because you see, I don't care how you see the truth, or with what vehicle you see the truth. It is just that you see the truth. If you see that on the music, on the media, on science, or on politics, you see that the best thing is Kennedy, and you ain't seen nothing yet. Yeah, this is just the beginning of all the mess and all the detailed information. If you see all the things lining up, bam, 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 you see the ritual and you see the background, and then you see out of a sudden that it can only mean that there is a religious background, a religious reason to kill Kennedy. It has nothing to do with the fat or the money or with Israel or with what else. It is a religious ritual, so it has to do with religion.
It has to do with power, worldly power.
Yeah, it's the same with Vietnam. We will go into Vietnam also sometimes, and there are many researchers claiming that Vietnam War only occurred for drug reasons. Yeah, this is all futile. This is all wrong. This is all religious reasons, but there are many, many, many researchers out there who are either on the payroll of any important and clerical organization, or they are fearing for their life. I don't know. You choose. But they are not speaking the truth. They are just going to a certain level, and then they are gatekeepers. And I hope to provide some religious information that you can conclude and that you can combine the dots. And even if we cannot prove it, because you see the government is not releasing the valuable information, so we are stuck at a certain point of time, we can go into symbology, we can go into some nitty-gritty here, and you come always back to the conclusion that it was a religious ritual. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. That's my 2 last cents, and yeah, that's all I wanted to say, because we did a 2-hour session already, and yeah, thanks for supporting me, Brett, on your channel.
My pleasure. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. We don't all of us need to do our part. In conjunction with listening to others and hearing them out. We have to do our part, and like Daryl Eberhard has pointed out, that Ezekiel 33:6, we're on the wall, watchmen, we're looking and into things and researching things. And the point is, what are you going to stand for at the end of the day? Who are you going to serve, right, Michael? Are you going to serve God, or are you going to serve Mammon? And, we're here to serve God. We're not here to serve Mammon, aren't we, Michael?
And that's not only our decision, that's God's decision. If he does not pull you, he does not pull you. We can speak until the cows come home. But it's not our decision. If somebody is ought to listen and ought to go the narrow path and is ought to have his eyes open, then it is God's work. It is not our work. We are just
that's
tools.
Right. We can't take any claim on that. That's not what we're here for. We're here to bring you the gospel message, that is, that God wants to set us free through his sacrifice that he gave for all time's sake. Once, 2,000 years ago. There's no future sacrifice coming here. We don't celebrate the Mass here. We expose the Mass for what it is. It's a false sacrifice, brothers and sisters in Christ. You have to recognize that this is a traditional system that's been set up a long time ago, and those Romans thought they took the Jews' religion from them and that they can use it as they please. Well, they're way off. Way, way, way off. And it's just a huge system of deceit that we run into in this world that uses religious reasons for its own purpose. But God has his religion too. Don't ever forget. Read your Bible. Maranatha.